Hey friends, welcome to Tribeless, the newest podcast from The Kevin Lee Show. I'm Kevin. Now, as I said, this is a new podcast, but as you know, there is nothing new about starting a podcast. Hell, there are hundreds of thousands of these damn things out there. The thing is, though, this isn't just a new podcast. This is a new way of podcasting, and more importantly, it's a new way of talking about all the things that matter to you, such as healthcare, education, politics, policing, and immigration. Now, when I say this is a new way of podcasting, what I mean by that is I don't bring the normal slants and bias to these conversations like many others do. I have no alliance to any party or platform. I do not consider myself a Democrat, and I'm definitely not conservative. So what's left? Libertarianism? No. Progressivism? Nope. Then what? To put it simply, all the above. Let me explain. I have been wrestling with my political identity for decades. I was raised a Democrat, but as I matured, I began to see the world a little differently. Socially, I have always been liberal. But even though I have supported making sure that there was help for those who needed it, I soon began to understand that we needed ways to pay for these programs. In other words, the vehicle of socialism only works when the engine of capitalism is there to support it. That said, I have felt not only pressure from outside myself, but also a pull from within to join either the Democratic or Republican parties over the years. Obviously, I never felt comfortable with either of those choices, so during the last number of years, I began researching other options. This had first led me to the Libertarian Party, but spoiler alert, that didn't work out so well either. What drew me to the Libertarian Party was simple. They were focused on individual liberties and rights, two things near and dear to my heart, so I was intrigued. I decided to dive a little deeper. I discovered they believed in not only a need to end the war on drugs, but to legalize drugs as well. This was something I could really get behind. I kept digging. They wanted to overhaul not only how we police in the United States, but reform the jails, release nonviolent criminals, eliminate for-profit prisons, reform and simplify the immigration process. Not to mention they were fighting for the legalization of sex work, as well as their desire of ending the stigma surrounding it. And let's not forget ending the endless wars overseas and bringing our troops home. These were all things I had been fighting for years. It seemed as though I had found a home, but then I dug a little deeper. I developed several friendships with people at rather high levels within the party, both locally as well as on the national stage. Long story short, I quickly began recognizing another principle that many libertarians possessed. They were hyper-focused on property rights. Now, I know what you're thinking. What's the big deal with people being concerned about their property rights? Well, nothing actually. But like I said, many of these people were hypersensitive about it. I had numerous conversations with people who believed that their property was worth more than anything else, including human life. Again, I understand this is a personal preference, but people I knew would talk about not only the right, but the duty to defend their property to the death, such as if someone walked across their lawn, they believed they had the right to shoot them. Or if a person rubbed up against their car as they walked by in a parking lot, shoot them. Or if, say, some punk had the audacity to steal their kid's bike, you get the point. Again, I don't want to lump all libertarians into this camp because many don't take their property rights to this extent, but honestly, too many of them did for my liking, and this, along with the fact that most libertarians agree that it should be more or less be every man for himself in society, well, that was enough for me to decide I couldn't go all in with the libertarian movement. So, next up were the progressives. Now, I know what you're thinking. How could I go from one extreme to the other? Well, because in many ways, they're not all that different. Like libertarians, progressives supported individual rights and liberties. They also want to end the war on drugs and legalize them, close private prisons, reform the police, reform immigration. They support ending needless wars. And as they put it, well, sex work is work. And then they even supported additional things that I liked, universal health care, UBIs, and raising taxes on the ultra-wealthy, just to name a few. So, where does it go wrong for me? Well, I quickly discovered after developing friendships with a number of lifelong progressives that their ultimate aim would undoubtedly bankrupt this country. I did not see any way it could be avoided with the endless spending they desired, and honestly, most of them admitted as much. Not to mention, I am no fan of identity politics. Don't get me wrong, I believe the majority of people who support this ideology are well-meaning, but I believe their efforts are being misdirected. And as the Reverend Dr. King once said, hate cannot drive out hate. And I'll just add, it would behoove us all if we decided to keep this in mind. So it's clear that I don't fit into the Democratic Party and I don't fit into the Republican Party. I do not fit into the Libertarian Party and I do not fit into the progressive movement. It's taken me a better part of 4 decades to learn the same childhood lesson we all learned at the tender age of 3. A square peg does not fit into a round hole, no matter how hard you try. And more importantly, I learned that politics isn't, for myself, a subject where I can easily fit into a one-size-fits-all party. I have thoughts on issues that align with one party, but then I have other thoughts that line up better with another party. And furthermore, I have still other ideas that don't fit into either of those 2 parties, but actually fit into a 3rd or 4th or 5th. Now, I could just write it off and say, well, I have enough eggs that go into this one basket, so I'll just agree to be one of them. But if I'm honest with myself, I just can't do that anymore. It's not fair to them, and it's certainly not fair to me. I am at the point in my life where I can openly admit to myself that politically speaking, I have no home. I have no tribe. I am tribeless. And if I had to guess, I believe I'm not the only one. So that is what this podcast is about. We, like many other podcasts, will be talking about the same topics that are in the headlines, subjects that are being shared in text between friends, as well as posts that show up on our feeds in Facebook. But what sets this podcast apart from others is simple. I am not going to be arguing for any side or any party or ideology, because the only responsibility I have is to the truth and where that truth leads us. Join us, won't you?